Have you ever had a day so bad you thought it couldn't get worse? Tasha Monroe was having one of those days. Tasha Monroe's day began, as it always did, at 5:45 a.m. with the sound of a screaming alarm clock and the immediate, gut-clenching mental calculation of how many hours of sleep she'd actually managed to get. The number was never enough. 32 years old, and she felt like she'd been running a marathon for the last 6. Ever since her son, Malik, had been born. The fatigue was a physical thing, a heavy coat she could never take off. The small apartment in Third Ward was quiet except for the hum of the aging refrigerator. Sunlight, still weak and pale, filtered through the blinds, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air and the slight shabbiness of the place. The scuff marks on the baseboards, the crack in the ceiling tile she'd been meaning to report to the landlord for months. But it was home. It was theirs. She padded quietly into Malik's room, her heart doing that familiar, painful squeeze it always did when she watched him sleep. He was 6, all long limbs and peaceful expressions, his stuffed dinosaur, Rex, tucked securely under his arm. For a moment, she just watched him, drawing strength from his innocence. Then the moment broke. "Baby, time to get up," she whispered, brushing his curls back from his forehead. School day. The morning routine was a well-rehearsed dance of controlled chaos. While Malik, still half asleep, stumbled into his school uniform, Tasha packed his lunch. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich, crusts cut off, just how he liked it, a bag of carrot sticks, a juice box. She braided his hair with swift, practiced movements as he munched on a piece of toast. "Miss Clara's picking you up after school. Okay? Mommy has to work late." "Okay, Mommy," he said around a mouthful of bread. She dropped him at the sitters. Miss Clara, a warm, grandmotherly woman who lived 2 blocks away and charged rates Tasha could almost afford. "Have a good day, my love," Tasha said, kissing his forehead through the car window. "Be good for Miss Clara." "I will," he chirped, already running off to see the sitter's cat. Tasha's job was as a receptionist at a dental clinic in the museum district. It was a 25-minute drive on a good day, and Houston traffic rarely offered a good day. Dr. Evans, her boss, was a man with perpetually cold hands and a colder demeanor, who viewed his staff as necessary and slightly disappointing appliances. The work was monotonous. Answering phones, scheduling appointments, filing insurance claims that would inevitably be denied. But it was a paycheck. It paid for Malik's after-school care, for the groceries, for the roof over their heads. It was a tightrope, and Tasha walked it every single day, her balance precarious. That afternoon, the tightrope swayed violently. She got a call from Miss Clara just as her shift was ending. "Tasha, honey, I'm so sorry. My car won't start. I think the battery's dead. I can't pick up Malik from school." Panic, cold and sharp, shot through Tasha. "Oh no. Okay, don't worry, Miss Clara. I'll figure it out." Her mind raced. She couldn't leave Malik at school. Aftercare ended at 6 p.m. sharp, and there was a $5 fee for every minute you were late. She had exactly 45 minutes to get across town. She flew out of the clinic, offering a hurried goodbye to a frowning Dr. Evans. Her car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a mysterious new rattle, started with a protest. The traffic was a nightmare, a solid river of brake lights. Each minute that ticked by on the clock felt like a physical blow. She finally screeched into the school pickup line at 5:58 p.m., her heart pounding. Malik was the last child waiting, looking small and forlorn next to the stern-looking aftercare teacher. I'm so sorry, Tasha breathed, practically leaping out of the car. "Cutting it close today, Ms. Monroe," the teacher said, her tone clipped. "I know. Car trouble. It won't happen again." She hustled a relieved Malik into the car, buckling him in. The stress of the evening, the weight of the constant juggling act, pressed down on her. She felt the hot prick of tears behind her eyes and fiercely willed them away. She couldn't cry. Not in front of Malik. "You okay, Mommy?" he asked, his big brown eyes full of concern. "I'm okay, baby," she said, forcing a bright smile. "Just a long day. How about we take the long way home? Go see the ducks." Malik's face lit up. "Yeah, It was a detour they couldn't really afford, time-wise or gas-wise, but Tasha needed the peace of Eleanor Tinsley Park almost as much as Malik wanted to see the ducks. The evening sun was casting a golden, forgiving light over the downtown Houston skyline. They walked hand in hand towards the bayou, the sounds of the city fading into the background, replaced by the gentle lapping of water and the distant quack of mallards. It was on the pedestrian bridge that Tasha's world, and the world of a complete stranger, collided. He was a white man, tall, standing unervingly still. He was dressed in a suit, but it was wrinkled, disheveled, like he'd been wearing it for days. His posture wasn't one of someone admiring the view. It was one of utter defeat. His shoulders were slumped, his head bowed. He was leaning over the railing, staring down into the brown water of the bayou, as if it held the answers to every question he'd ever had. A cold dread, entirely different from the panic of being late, seized Tasha. She knew that posture. She knew that look of being completely and utterly lost. She had felt it herself in the dark, silent nights after Malik's father left, when the baby wouldn't stop crying and the rent was due, and she had no one to call. "Mommy," Malik whispered, his small hand tightening in hers. "What's that man doing?" Tasha's mouth went dry. Her instincts, the ones that had been honed by years of survival, screamed at her to look away, to keep walking, to protect herself and her child from whatever tragedy was unfolding. But a deeper, more human instinct, one that remembered her own darkness, won out. "I don't know, baby," she said, her voice low and urgent. She knelt down, her knees trembling. She handed Malik her phone. "I need you to be my super big hero, okay? I need you to tap the green phone icon and then tap 911. Tell the lady on the phone that we're at the park on the bridge and a man needs help. Can you do that for me? Can you be super brave?" Malik's eyes were wide with fear and importance, but he nodded, clutching the phone like a lifeline. "A man needs help on the bridge. That's right, baby. Do it now." She stood up, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she felt dizzy. She took a few slow steps toward the man. "Hey," she called out, her voice softer than she intended, almost swallowed by the breeze coming off the water. He didn't move. "Hey," she said again, a little louder. "You okay?" He turned his head just slightly. His face was pale, etched with exhaustion that was soul deep. His eyes were red-rimmed and utterly hollow. He looked at her but didn't seem to see her. "I wouldn't be," he muttered, his voice raspy and raw. "But that's the point, isn't it?" Tasha took another cautious step closer. The gap between them felt immense, a chasm between two completely different worlds. "You don't have to do this," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "Whatever it is, it's not worth this." He let out a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. It was a dry, cracking sound. "You don't know me. You don't know anything about it. Just leave me alone." "You're right, I don't," she admitted, holding her ground. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the white-knuckled grip he had on the railing. "But I know what it feels like to think there's no way out. I know that feeling. It lies to you, tells you it's forever. But it's not." This made him turn to look at her properly. His gaze was searching, confused, as if he couldn't quite process her presence. "Why are you even talking to me? Why do you care? Just go." "Because a long time ago, someone talked to me when I felt like you do," Tasha said, the memory of sitting on the floor of her bathroom, sobbing, with a newborn Malik in her arms, flashing in her mind. A nurse at the pediatrician's office had seen the despair in her eyes and had sat with her for an hour, just talking. They didn't have to, but they did. So now it's my turn. Just step back. Come talk to me. For a long, agonizing moment, he just stared at her. The world seemed to shrink to the space on that bridge. The desperate man, the terrified woman, and the little boy whispering urgently into a phone. The sounds of the city, the distant hum of traffic on Allen Parkway, the laughter of people in the park, faded into a dull roar. Tasha held her breath, praying she hadn't said the wrong thing, that she hadn't somehow made it worse. Then, with a shuddering sigh that seemed to rack his entire frame, The fight went out of him. His shoulders slumped further, but this time in surrender, not defeat. He loosened his white-knuckled grip on the railing and took one small, shuffling step backward. Then another. The relief that washed over Tasha was so potent it made her knees buckle slightly. She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. At that moment, the beautiful, welcome sound of sirens cut through the air, growing rapidly closer. Malik came running up, holding out her phone. "I did it, Mommy. The lady is sending the police. She said to stay on the line, but you told me to hang up if they came. You did perfect, baby. You were so brave." She pulled him close, her eyes never leaving the man. The police and paramedics arrived, their movements efficient and calm. They approached the man gently, speaking to him in low, reassuring tones. He went with them without protest, looking dazed and broken. One officer, a woman with kind eyes, came over to Tasha to get a statement. "You did a good thing here today, ma'am," the officer said, jotting down Tasha's name and number. "Might have saved his life." Tasha just nodded, feeling numb. As they led the man to the waiting ambulance, he paused and looked back at her one last time. His expression was still hollow, but there was a new flicker in his eyes, something like confusion, or maybe the faintest spark of gratitude. She gave him a small, reassuring nod. Then the ambulance doors closed, and he was gone. She walked home with Malik, her hand clutching his a little too tightly. The image of the man's hollow eyes burned into her memory. The entire event felt surreal, like a scene from a movie that had somehow spliced itself into her very ordinary, very stressful life. She pushed it into a corner of her mind, filing it under things I had to do. She had real-world problems to solve, like the fact that this detour had made her late getting home, which meant dinner would be rushed, and she still had to help Malik with his reading homework. The next day at the dental clinic was a marathon of double-booked patients and a perpetually annoyed Dr. Evans. Mrs. Gable was in a mood because her insurance wouldn't cover the gold crown. Mr. Henderson had forgotten his dentures and was furious about it, and the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Tasha was buried in a mountain of paperwork and pre-authorization forms, her interaction on the bridge feeling more and more like a distant, strange dream. That was, until the front door chimed at exactly 11:17 a.m. She looked up, a professional, polished smile already on her face. "Welcome to Evans Dental. How can I help?" The words died in her throat that it was him. The man from the bridge. He looked transformed. The stubble was gone, replaced by a clean shave. His hair, which had been messy and unkempt, was now neatly styled. He wore a simple but exquisitely tailored navy button-down shirt and dark jeans that fit him perfectly. But the most profound change was in his eyes. They were no longer hollow and desperate. They were a clear, focused blue, and they were locked directly on her. He walked right up to her desk, bypassing the other waiting patients. The confidence in his stride was palpable, a world away from the broken man of the day before. "Hi," he said, his voice firm and steady. It was a nice voice, a warm baritone. "Hi," Tasha managed to reply, her mind racing. Was he okay? Was he here to thank her? To blame her? Her professional facade crumbled. "I'm looking for Tasha Monroe," he said, a small, genuine smile playing on his lips. Tasha stood up slowly, her mouth suddenly dry. "That's me." His smile widened. "I owe you my life." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and immense. From behind his back, he produced a simple but stunning bouquet of sunflowers, bright, cheerful, and utterly unexpected in the sterile, clinical environment of the dental office. A few of the waiting patients looked up from their magazines, their curiosity piqued. I didn't really do anything," she stammered, her face growing warm. She could feel the eyes of the entire waiting room on her. "You did everything," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He placed the vibrant flowers on the counter. They seemed to radiate light. "You saw me. You spoke to me. You didn't look away. My name is Ethan. Ethan Croft." He extended his hand. After a beat of hesitation, she shook it. His grip was firm, warm. "Are you okay?" she asked, the question feeling utterly inadequate. "I'm getting there," he said. "Thanks to you." I just wanted to thank you. Properly. He glanced around the waiting room, then back at her, his voice dropping slightly. Would you let me buy you lunch? No pressure, no strings. Just lunch. A thank you lunch. Tasha's mind raced. Her break was in 15 minutes. This was insane. This was also the most interesting, bewildering thing that had happened to her in years. Her first instinct was to say no, to retreat into the safety of her routine. She thought of Ms. Clara's car, her own whining Civic, the stack of bills on her counter. She thought of the profound, bottomless despair she had seen in his eyes just yesterday. This man, Ethan, standing before her now with such disarming confidence, had been moments from ending everything. Okay, she heard herself say, the word surprising her as much as it seemed to please him. But I picked the place. His smile was like the sun coming out. Deal. 15 minutes later, she led him 2 blocks down to Taqueria del Sol, a no-frills, family-run spot she frequented, with sticky vinyl booths and a salsa bar that was legendary for its heat. It was the polar opposite of the kind of sleek, minimalist bistros she assumed a man like him. A man who wore shirts that probably cost more than her weekly grocery bill would frequent that he didn't blink. He slid into the booth across from her, picked up the laminated menu stained with hot sauce, and ordered a grilled chicken burrito bowl with extra guacamole. He listened intently as she talked, his eyes never leaving her face. He asked about Malik, not in a polite, superficial way, but with genuine curiosity. He asked about her job, about growing up in Houston. So, she finally asked, dipping a chip into the fiery red salsa. What happened? Yesterday on the bridge. You said you lost everything. Ethan sighed, pushing his bowl around with his fork. The confident facade slipped for just a moment, revealing the shadows beneath. I did. In a way, I built a company, tech software that helps other businesses run their logistics. Spent over a decade of my life on it. I ate, slept, and breathed it. I thought I had it all. The success, the partners I trusted implicitly. He paused, and a flicker of pain crossed his face. Then I found out one of them, my COO and my best friend since college, was embezzling. He'd been siphoning funds for years, making backroom deals that undermined the entire company. It all collapsed, fast and publicly. I didn't just lose the company. I lost my best friend, my reputation, my entire identity. It was all I was. Tasha nodded, understanding that feeling more than he could know. Not on a billionaire scale, but on a human one. The fear of your entire foundation crumbling beneath you. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said, the shadows receding as he looked at her. You helped me see that maybe it was a foundation that needed to crumble. Maybe what I was building wasn't worth the man I was becoming. He took a sip of his water. Can I see you again? I'd really like to, without the life or death context. And despite every sensible alarm bell in her head, despite Miss Loretta's voice whispering warnings in her mind, Tasha heard herself say yes. Their third lunch date was when the neighborhood watch, led by the formidable Miss Loretta from 3 doors down, officially went on high alert. Tasha was getting out of Ethan's car, a surprisingly understated black Cadillac Escalade, after he'd driven her home from a lunch that had stretched into a 2-hour conversation. She was laughing at something he'd said when she heard the familiar, deliberate throat clearing. Ahem, Tasha Monroe. Just who is that? Miss Loretta asked, arms crossed over her vibrant floral house dress. Her eyes narrowed behind her thick, cat eyeglasses. She was a pillar of the community, the neighborhood's self-appointed historian, gossip columnist, and moral compass. Oh, hey, Miss Loretta. That's just Ethan. A friend. Tasha could feel her cheeks flushing. Friend? Loretta repeated, the word dripping with theatrical skepticism. She peered past Tasha at the SUV, which was idling with a quiet, expensive purr. Friends don't got cars that quiet. That's money quiet. What he want? Huh? A man like that, driving a car like that, don't just show up in the 3rd Ward for no reason. He ain't from around here. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You watch yourself, child. Not all that glitters is gold. Sometimes it's just fool's gold, and it'll leave you looking foolish. Your mama wouldn't want you getting mixed up with no trouble. Tasha laughed it off, brushing aside the older woman's concerns. It's not like that, Miss Loretta. He's just a nice guy. Really. No trouble. But the warning, however dramatically delivered, planted a tiny seed of doubt. That seed was watered vigorously a few days later when Malik's father, Rico, decided to make his grand, unwelcome re-entrance. He appeared outside Malik's school one afternoon, leaning against a flashy but cheap-looking Charger with overly tinted windows, all fake charm and practice swagger. He was dressed in clothes that were trying too hard, designer logos plastered everywhere, a heavy gold chain around his neck. Well, 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 look what the cat dragged in, he said, a slick grin on his face as Tasha and Malik approached. My son, look at you, man. You get bigger every time I see you. He moved to ruffle Malik's hair. Malik shrank behind Tasha's legs, clutching her jeans. What do you want, Rico? Tasha asked, her voice flat and cold. She felt a familiar anger, old and worn, bubble up inside her. I want my family, he said, the act dropping for a second, revealing the cold entitlement beneath. The grin vanished. I heard things, Tasha. I heard you've been running around with some new dude. Some white knight in a shiny SUV. That what you into now? You forget where you came from? You forget who your people are. The accusation, the sheer audacity of it after 6 years of radio silence, took her breath away. You made me forget you a long time ago, she shot back, her anger a hot, sharp blade. You don't get to show up now talking about people and family. You lost that right when you walked out and never looked back. Stay away from us, Rico. The look he gave her was pure, unadulterated venom. The charming mask was completely gone. You'll regret this, he hissed, his voice low and menacing. You think you're better? You'll regret choosing him. The threat hung in the humid air long after he'd peeled out of the parking lot, his exhaust pipe roaring. Tasha shoved the interaction down, trying to focus on the whirlwind that was Ethan. He was wonderful. He was attentive, kind, and he adored Malik. He listened to her 6-year-old's endless facts about dinosaurs with genuine interest. He was a calm, steady presence in her chaotic world. A week later, he invited her and Malik to his place for dinner. She expected a nice condo, maybe in a trendy part of town like Montrose or the Heights. The valet standing outside the museum tower downtown should have been her first clue. The sleek, marble-lined lobby should have been the second. The private elevator that required a keycard and opened directly into his foyer was the third. The view from his penthouse apartment was the breathtaking, heart-stopping finale. The entire west wall was floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a panoramic, postcard-perfect view of the entire Houston skyline. The setting sun was painting the glass skyscrapers in shades of orange and pink. Below, the city lights were beginning to twinkle like a carpet of diamonds stretching to the horizon. Malik ran to the windows, his shrieks of joy echoing in the vast, minimalist space. Mommy, we're in the clouds. Look, we're above everything. Tasha stood frozen in the entryway, her purse feeling cheap and shabby in her hands. The apartment was stunning, tasteful, and utterly intimidating. It spoke of a world so far removed from her own it might as well have been on another planet. Ethan, what is this? He looked genuinely nervous, shoving his hands in his pockets. He looked more like the man on the bridge in that moment than the confident CEO. I need to confess something. I lied to you, or I omitted the full truth. He took a deep breath. When I said I lost everything, I lost control of my company. I was pushed out by the board. But my shares, the stock, the investments, I'm still a very, very wealthy. The air left Tasha's lungs. The spacious room suddenly felt suffocatingly small. How wealthy? The question came out as a whisper. He met her gaze, looking almost ashamed. The term is centimillionaire, pushing well into billionaire territory depending on the market. The word landed in the silent, luxurious apartment with the force of a physical blow. Billionaire. It was a number from headlines, from Forbes lists, from movies. It was not a word associated with a man who ate tacos with you and let your son teach him the difference between a T-Rex and a velociraptor. She thought of her struggling car, her maxed-out credit card, the constant, grinding knot of anxiety in her stomach about rent. The chasm between their worlds wasn't just wide. It was a gaping void. "I didn't want you to see the money," he said softly, walking toward her. He didn't try to touch her. "I wanted you to see me. And the only time in the last decade someone has done that was when you saw me on that bridge, when I had nothing. You looked at the man, not the portfolio. I was terrified of losing that. I was terrified you'd look at me the way everyone else does now." Tasha was speechless, a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, a sense of betrayal, a strange sense of awe, and underneath it all, the memory of the broken man on the bridge. He was still that man. The money, the penthouse, the view, it was all just scenery. "I don't want your money, Ethan," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I know," he replied, his eyes utterly sincere. "That's the only reason I'm standing here offering you every single bit of it." The fairy tale, however, was about to be interrupted by the villain of the piece. Rico's threats weren't empty. The first sign was Tasha's apartment being broken into. It happened on a day she and Malik were at a park with Ethan. They came home to find the door jimmied open, the lock splintered. The place was ransacked, but in a petty, vicious way. Her old TV was still there. Her laptop, a dinosaur, was left on the table. But her jewelry box, containing the few pieces of costume jewelry she owned and her grandmother's thin gold locket, was emptied onto the floor, the locket gone. Her purse was missing, later found dumped in an alley nearby. Her cash gone. Her credit cards maxed out at a series of gas stations and liquor stores before she could cancel them. It wasn't a robbery for profit. It was a violation, a message meant to intimidate and humiliate. The real, devastating blow came a few days later. Dr. Evans called her into his office, his face a grim mask. "Tasha, close the door." The air in the room was cold. "We've had a very serious complaint. A patient, a Mrs. Donahue, is alleging you stole her credit card information from her file last week. She's reporting fraudulent charges." The blood drained from Tasha's face. She felt the floor lurch beneath her. "What? That's impossible. Dr. Evans, I would never. I've worked here for 5 years. You know I would never do that." "There's evidence, Tasha," he said, not meeting her eyes, staring instead at a paper on his desk. "There's an email, sent from your personal email account to a shady-looking Gmail address, with a photo of Mrs. Donahue's credit card and driver's license attached." A cold, paralyzing dread seized her. She hadn't sent any such email, but someone had accessed her account. Rico. It had to be. He knew her password. It had been Malik's birthday for years, something she'd never bothered to change because who would ever target her? She felt sick. "That wasn't me. Someone must have hacked my account. You have to believe me. The email originated from your IP address, Tasha," he said, his voice cold. "The police are involved. I have no choice. I'm terminating your employment, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Humiliated, terrified, and in a state of complete shock, she was marched out of the building with a small box of her belongings. A framed photo of Malik, a spare sweater, a coffee mug. She sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, crying tears of sheer rage and despair. Her world, the careful, precarious life she had built, had been shattered in an instant. Her reputation was in tatters. How would she get another job? Who would believe her? Humiliated and terrified of the legal trouble that might be coming, she didn't want to tell Ethan. She felt stained by the accusation, ashamed. But he showed up at her apartment that evening, saw the broken lock the landlord had hastily repaired, saw the despair she couldn't hide. "Tasha, talk to me. What happened?" His voice was gentle but firm. When the whole story came tumbling out, the break-in, the theft, the fraudulent email, losing her job, his calm demeanor shifted. A quiet, terrifying fury settled over him. This wasn't the despairing man from the bridge or the charming lunch date. This was a CEO who was used to winning, to protecting what was his. And she and Malik were now unequivocally in that category. "I'm handling this," he said, his voice low and steady. devoid of all emotion. "Ethan, no, please. Don't do anything. I can't have violence. I can't have that around Malik." "This won't be violence," he said, a determined, cold glint in his eye. He pulled out his phone. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. "This will be justice. The boring, paperwork kind." He dialed a number. "Charles? It's Ethan. I need you to engage our cybersecurity team and a private investigator. Immediately. I'm sending you the details." What followed was a masterclass in quiet, legal, and utterly comprehensive annihilation. Ethan's team was a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. The private investigator, a gruff, efficient former HPD detective named Miles, dug into Rico's life with terrifying speed. He uncovered a laundry list of parole violations from a past conviction Rico had kept hidden. He found mountains of debt, shady associates, and a pattern of intimidation and fraud. Meanwhile, the cybersecurity team traced the fraudulent email. It hadn't been sent from her home IP address. Rico had used a VPN to mask his location, but they pierced through it, tracing the activity to a public library computer in a branch Rico frequented. They obtained the security footage from the library, which clearly showed Rico at the computer at the exact time the email was sent. They then tracked the fraudulent purchases made with the stolen credit card, a new watch, a fancy jacket, which had been delivered to a flophouse motel where Rico was staying. Within 72 hours, it was over. Rico was arrested outside his motel room on a stunning array of charges: violation of parole, identity theft, fraud, breaking and entering. The case against him was so airtight it was almost boring. The charges against Tasha were dropped before they were even formally filed. The final piece was Ethan's doing personally. He called Dr. Evans, and with Tasha on the line, his lawyer conferenced in, he presented a summarized, devastatingly professional version of the evidence. He wasn't threatening. He was matter-of-fact, his tone that of a man used to dealing with facts and data. Dr. Evans, stammering and falling over himself with apologies, not only offered Tasha her job back on the spot but offered her a significant raise and a promotion to office manager. Sitting in her modest apartment, listening to her formerly imperious boss grovel, Tasha finally broke down crying. The relief was a tidal wave, washing away the fear and the shame. Ethan simply held her, saying nothing, his presence a solid, unshakable rock. When she finally pulled back, she looked at him, her vision blurred by tears. One balmy Houston evening, as they sat on the back porch watching Malik chase fireflies, the air sweet with the smell of jasmine, Ethan turned to her. "I meant what I said. You know, every word." "I know you did," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder, content in a way she'd never thought possible. "I want to make it official," he said softly. "I want to build this life with you, forever. You, me, and Malik. A family." He didn't have a ring. He didn't need one. The question was in his eyes, in the life they had already built together piece by piece. Tasha looked at her son's joyful face, illuminated by the golden light of the porch lamp, his laughter floating on the night air. She looked at the man beside her, who had seen her at her most broken and had not looked away, who had fought for her without being asked. She thought of the bridge, the despair, the long and winding road of struggle and hope that had led them to this perfect moment. She smiled, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and sure, "to all of it." And that's the story of how a single moment of connection, of choosing to see someone in their darkest hour, can change everything. From the brink of despair to a love worth billions, Tasha and Ethan's story is a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't things you can buy. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever experienced a twist of fate that changed your life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories with incredible twists. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.